Jesus Freak here. So I've been thinking. You probably noticed that my weekly readings are basically divided into 5 sections. And each of these sections, I used to record them all at once. I've started recording them one segment at a time to make it easier. And so that there's not so much dead air between them. Now, the little history of the way I structure it. I start out with a prayer, and I use this book. I actually got 2 copies plus a PDF. This is Book of Common Prayer as used by the Episcopal Church and adopted in 1979. I bought this at the local Christian bookstore. Now, they have these prayers a little way into the book. There's one for every week of the year. Owing for, of course, the difference between the start of Lent and every year. And there's a choice between 1662 language and 1979 language. Obviously, I go with the 1662 option. There's a bunch of other stuff in here, too. It's got a copy of the Revised Common Lectionary as well as its predecessor that was used before they adopted the RCL. I don't actually use this source. I use a website. There's almost complete translation of the Book of Songs in here, too. Now, it's a little too contemporary, and by that I mean it's not just a matter of modern language. There is some gender-neutral language in there. Now, I have personal preferences, and regardless of what my personal opinion is of translations, in fact, this is a Revised Standard Version. I actually prefer this translation most of the time. It's before they started getting too modern. It gets rid of some of these, and now it's in modern English, but they didn't get into the gender neutrality or any of the politically correct stuff. This was before any of that. Most of that happened since the 1960s for 2 reasons. The first being, the ecumenical movement and Second Vatican. And the second is 1967, the Summer of Lust. Instead, I'll use one or another of the various King James Bibles I use because I feel that in worship, sticking to this traditional translation is the better option. Now, I keep with the Revised Common Lectionary mostly. I use the linked readings track rather than the continuous readings track. I remove any of the apocryphal options. Like, there's a few readings from Wisdom of Solomon, and I think there's one or two from Sirach. And as I've shown in some of my other videos, yes, I have a King James Apocrypha. I can read them from the KJV if I feel like it. I don't feel like it. I don't think it should be used in church. Now, there's 4 readings every Sunday. The first reading is usually from the Old Testament. The second is, and it's traditionally been responsive or in some other format. Obviously, with only one person, I can just read it and that's all I can do. That's the Psalter. Then there's the Epistle and the Gospel. Now, these terms, Old Testament, Psalter, Epistle, and Gospel, the lectionary plays a little bit loose with it. For example, during Eastertide, apart from Easter itself and the second Sunday in Eastertide, aka Doubting Thomas Sunday, most of the Old Testament readings are actually from Acts, and occasionally Acts can be used instead of an epistle. Once in a while, the Psalter won't actually come from Psalms. I think there might be one or two from Isaiah or Luke. So it's a little bit loose here. Of course, the Gospel reading is always from the Gospels. Now, as I said earlier, I started to record in segments and then cut the segments up. I actually record 5 separate videos and stitched them together in post-production with a 5-second pause between each video. And the videos are cut a little bit to eliminate dead air and to reduce how often you see me reach for the mouse to shut off the recording. You don't always see this. You especially didn't see this on my old computer because I pressed space on the keyboard instead. It actually still works, but out of habit with this program I use the mouse. Now, I'm thinking of adding a graphical bumper before each segment, except of course the first. I'm not exactly an artist. I can probably find some relevant artwork. Obviously, you know, there's the one of the there's the graphic of the 4 evangelists, symbolic representations you've probably seen a couple times on the channel. You know, like one of them's an eagle, one of them's a lion, you know. I'd probably use that to represent the gospel. I don't know. Might even be worth, you know, asking someone to help me out. The cards I use are 1920 by 1080. This is regardless of what video resolution I render at. The last one I rendered at 1280 by 720. Even though the video is actually 800 by 448 and upscaled. It's just easier that way. Now, a lot of the stuff I do when I change things around, it's to make things easier. For example, on the last card or two that I used, I wrote in this title at the beginning using a program called the GIMP. It's basically a free clone of Photoshop, so I just wrote the text in that way. I decided to take a different approach this week. Instead, I used the video editing software. I use Avicent to do that instead. And that makes it easier because I can add the text in at render time. Now, before I used the cards, I actually did it with a subtitle. Of course, it still goes in with Avicent, but it's done at the time I generate the on-screen text you see while I'm reading the Bible. I'm not even sure what kind of illustrations I'd want to put in for the other readings. I got, I guess, one that I can probably use for the Psaltery and use a harp for that. I got one that's in one of my hymnals. Think about it. I'll, take suggestions. I always like suggestions. But we'll see. I'm planning to have everything completely introduced by the time Advent rolls around. And I'm planning to do something special for Advent. Now, I thought about buying pillar candles at Save a Lot yesterday when I was there. But I'm like, do I really want to take a candle that is Catholic iconography, Church of Rome stuff, and just try to see if I can take that off? I'd rather get a normal candle. And of course, I'd need 4 of them. 3 blue or purple and 1 pink. And of course, a way to stand them up. It's 4 months out. I don't have to worry about it just yet. The candles I know I can get on Amazon. I don't know how good they'll be. The stands I can probably, if I can't find what I need at Amazon, I can probably get them at Michael's. But I get about 4 months to think it over. So I'll worry about it later. But, just something I gotta have in the back of my mind. Anyways, I've been jibber-jabbering a while, so I should probably shut this down. Jesus, freak out.